Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 26th day of August 2024, the first day of school for the new term. Let's refresh your mind on the issues of concern at the university funding model. I just want to take you through what has been communicated by the government of the Republic of Kenya. There are 5 bands split into levels of income by the families. The first one is that for learners whose families earn up to 5,995 shillings, they belong to Band 1. Band 2 are learners whose families earn up to 23,670. Band 3, those who earn up to 70,000. And Band 4, for families that earn up to 120,000 shillings a month. Band 5, those that earn more than 120,000 shillings a month. And therefore, this is how they'll be categorized. That for the most vulnerable, earning less than 5,000, let's just call it 6,000 shillings, the government will sponsor 70% of scholarship. Then 25% of the school fees will be in form of a loan, and 5% to be raised by the family. Of course, 5% means different things for different programs. Band 2, government 60%, loan 30%, family 10%, and there's also an upkeep, which is a loan from HELB of 55,000 shillings per learner. For Band 3, remember, families whose income is up to 70,000 shillings, the government will sponsor 50% of the school fees, 30% to be from loans, 20% to be by the family, and there'll be an upkeep of 50,000 shillings, again, another loan. Band 4, the government will sponsor 40%. These are families whose income is up to 120,000 shillings, but more than 70,000. And the loan will be 30% again. Family will raise 30%, and the upkeep will be 45,000 shillings per learners. Now, those considered to be the wealthiest in Band 5, meaning incomes of more than 120,000 shillings, government will just give you 30%, then 70% to be raised between you, your family, and a loan from HELB, and an upkeep of 40,000 shillings. Let's just take a look at what may happen for a student who is studying medicine at Moi University, whose cost is 612,000 shillings a year. The government will sponsor 183,000 shillings for Band 5 learner whose income in a family is of over 120,000 shillings, meaning that the government through HELB will pay another 183,000, and the family will have to raise 244,000 shillings. Let's look at Band 4, because that family has an income of 120,000 shillings maximum a month. So the government will pay for that learner 244,000 shillings. HELB will give a loan of 183. But the family will have to raise 183,000 shillings. So remember, the maximum income is 120,000 shillings. But the family will have to pay 183,000 shillings. So you need at least 2 months to raise that school fees, not doing anything else, including financing the operations of that family. By the end of the 6 years, that students will have accumulated a loan of 1.1 million shillings. Add to that the upkeep of 45,000 shillings. Multiply that by 6. That is 270. 270 plus 1.1 should be 1.37 million shillings by the end of 6 years. So by the time that learner is finishing school, they'll have to contend with such kind of a loan. So it gets easier for learners whose programs are cheaper. For instance, if you have to look at the Bachelor of Arts at KC University, Bachelor of Education Arts, which costs about 283,000 shillings, then the figures vary because a student that comes from the poorest family, the government will give a scholarship of 198,000 shillings. There will be a loan from HELB of 70,000 shillings per year, and the family will have to raise about 14,000 shillings. Now, by the end of the 4 years, the loan will be 283, but you add to that the upkeep of 60,000 shillings every year. 60 times 4 should be 240. 240 plus 283 gets you to about 523,000 shillings of loan by the end of the 4 years. And again, if you have to look at the last slide that gives an account of the percentages of learners, so families that earn up to 6,000 shillings a month, they are 16% in the country. Families that earn up to 23,000 shillings, between 6,000 shillings and 23,000 shillings are 18%. But families whose incomes are more than 23,000 according to the government, they are 68%, because 18% of families that are between 23,000 and 70,000 are 18%. There's something you need to reflect on. For Band 4, meaning families that are earning more than 70,000 but below 120,000, they are 42%. 8% of families earn more than 120,000 shillings. What does that mean? That half of the cohort of learners of KCSE 2023 that have been called to universities have come from families that earn more than 120,000 shillings. Or actually more than 70,000 shillings. Is that possible, Amos?
The sad reality is that education, as we have always said, it's moved away from a public good. One time it became a merited good, and now it's officially a premium good. And so if you're poor, you are condemned, because you're looking at the 23,000 that we're mentioning. These are border riders, and I mean, who gets an income in a household of 6,000 that you qualify to go to Band 1? For heaven's sake. Even in the retired formula, the most a student got as loan was just about 300,000 Kenya shillings. And now the same student has now been moved to 1.37. And education, which is the pathway for the poor to climb the socioeconomic ladder, it's completely now been wiped off. So the hopes of millions are completely dimmed. So it's important for us to go back to the spirit of what education should serve. And if we want to provide education to the poor, because we haven't even now talked about the quality of that education, before even they come out and look for jobs, which is another ballgame altogether. So I think that if we're not careful, which I doubt if we are condemning these millions to oblivion. And in as much as I want to be the person preaching hope, I wouldn't really tell Jeroboam that the battlefield are very good. I think that let's be very honest, protect the poor. The challenge we've had over the last 20 years is that all the policies that were to protect the poor have turned out to be counterproductive. Free primary education turned out to be counterproductive. Free day secondary education is not again serving the poor that it was supposed to serve. The mega project, CBC, has again turned out not to protect the same poor, because they are their children going to the public schools with 3 teachers of JSS who are not even configured to teach the content that they should be teaching. And as Emmanuel did mention, we are talking about grade 9, where the bulk of that content is pure high school content, and you do not have qualified and competent sufficient instructors to teach them. And after all this, you dump them in the university. A friend of mine went to admit the son at the University of Nairobi last week, and he was very proud of the son going to his alma mater. And he asked the son to go and check for accommodation, because he had applied for it, which again is very competitive to get that accommodation. And when the son came back distraught on whether he should really take up the space, the dad was very convinced that the son should go to the University of Nairobi, Chiromo. To be very precise, this is public information, and anyone can go there to verify whether what we are saying is true or it's not. Unfortunately, when the dad went there, he shed tears on behalf of his sons because of the deplorable conditions within the hostel facilities. The hostels that we lived in personally a few years ago, when I was in KU, Menengai Block 2, Room 13, and the conditions right now in most of our universities, they are pathetic. I have lived in places where I have seen university students walking around with the jerry cans looking for water. And again, to add to that, you're adding them the date burden. I think it's basically condemning people already in ICU.
What was the situation at Chiromo?
The hostels are deplorable. The hostels are deplorable. The condition, basically the point is that the conditions in hostels in a lot of our public universities, much as they're equally difficult to access, the conditions are deplorable. You look at how our children living, and they live like squalors. You look at how they're staying. And when they come out, you know what we tell them? Go and create jobs. They are being told by politicians and adults who have never created a single job. They have spent all their time being employed. So I think let's also be honest a little bit to our children and give them a fair sense of decency. Because when you go through school, through such circumstances, some of the washrooms you go to, they kill even your own dignity. You come out, you're not a human being. So let's be a little bit more serious. And that's why I said I'm not sure whether we are careful enough, but let's be a little bit, just be more serious and look at whether we want to have these date numbers for our students. It is possible for us to provide education which is affordable. And we know very well that resources within the higher education, the challenge is around spreading them too thin. I mean, what is the whole essence of having, in a radius of 16 kilometers, 5 universities providing the same program? What is the beacon being offered at JKUAT that is different from KU, that is different from the University of Nairobi, which is different from Kenya Polytechnic, Technical University of Kenya just across the road, and then a few kilometers away you have Cooperative University, and then you have Multimedia University. Just because, we have spread the resources too thin. The resources going to higher education would actually afford to give us quality education for our children. But the problem is the configuration of the same resources. We have a problem, and we must be bold enough to address it. But let's start from this point. Let us make university education affordable. It's not affordable. And it doesn't matter how long you shout. It doesn't matter how long you keep on pushing these rectangular school of thought that it is communication which is an issue. Communication is not an issue. I left the university with a loan of 200,000. Today, if I was in the university, I would have left the loan. I would have left the university with a loan of 700,000. So how is that a communication issue? Whether you are given the entire platform, you camp at Citizen TV, from morning to evening, we give you all the newspaper headlines, which 30% of this newspaper is full of auctioneering people's property because things are not very well. Whether we give you the entire space to replace that space with communicating what university funding model is all about, or you hold 1 million town hall meetings, it doesn't remove the fact that university education has become extremely unaffordable to most households.
All right.
There are very few people who qualify for that band one. Let's call it as it is. There is a problem, and if the president wants to intervene and make education affordable.
I hear you. Let's spread the question to Alana here, because he's joining second year next month.
Yeah.
So you've been part of the first cohort that has benefited or endured the new funding model. What has been your experience? First of all, what course are you studying?
Undergraduate in Economics and Finance.
That's Bachelor of?
Economics and Finance.
Just that, Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Economics and Finance?
Bachelor of Economics and Finance.
This is KU?
Yeah.
And how much is the school fees?
183,600.
How much do you pay at the family level?
55,090.
And how much loan do you get?
100 and currently for the first year stands at 102,604.
So say that again?
102,604.
And how much does government pay?
The government pays around 73,000 of the money.
How is your family taking this?
Coming from a single parent background, I can say it's not easy for my parent, owing the fact that I'm placed in Band 4 currently, where as it stands, the people in Band 4, their parents or the household is earning a salary close to 120,000 or more than 70,000, which is not the case. And the government says that they use a means testing instrument to classify these students into the bands. Now the question is, how efficient or how is the efficacy of this new funding model? How is it going to serve the students if even the categorization in the bands is actually wrong? Because I've been watching the news for the past week, and every day we have students coming to the television set saying that they are placed in Band 5, whereas they come from extremely needy backgrounds, and there is candid information showing that they are from the needy backgrounds, but now they are placed in Band 5. And every time and again, you're being told to appeal. And for these appeals, currently we stand at 26,000 appeals, and not all will go through because there are restrictions. Maybe you the last academic year, you had both parents, maybe one parent is deceased, or maybe they were laid off from their jobs. And when you appeal, they ask you for maybe an unemployment certificate. And not all people can be able to present that document. So it's a challenge for majority of the students taking courses in the university currently.
So it is your statement that your family income is not between 70 and 120,000?
Not close.
And when I'm doing the calculation, because you're saying that the loan is 102,000?
Yeah, currently. My loan stands at 102,604.
Divided by 183, that's about 55%. Why are you getting such a high loan? Because Band 4 talks about the government scholarship is 40%, the loan is 30%, the family is 30%. Or have you included the upkeep?
I don't know how they calculated the loan balance, but checking from my help portal, for my first year, the loan balance indicated standards 102,604. So even if they include the upkeep, which is 45,000 for both semesters, I remain with a loan of around 70-something thousand. Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
No, I have an elder sister, but currently she's not studying.
Okay. Dr. Manyasa, what does that say for a student who is supposed to be benefiting from the system, categorized under the wrong band? Have you appealed, first of all? Did you appeal?
I did appeal, but my appeal was not successful.
Okay. Oh, what are your thoughts?
So the whole idea of the new funding model, the idea itself is not bad. The idea itself will have been very helpful to address the inequities in education. Actually, at the core of it, we were asking the question, because I was one of the people who initially thought this should be a good idea. Asking the question, why a parent who pays 300,000, 350,000 for a primary school kid would require funding for the same kid in the university unless they can demonstrate that circumstances have changed. Or parents who have employers willing to pay school fees for their kids to whatever level would still need government subsidy when actually the employer would not mind paying that fees. So the idea was that you get children who can pay, and there are a few in this country who can pay, to actually pay the full cost. And then put the other resources that will have gone to subsidizing such a children in improving the subsidy that goes to the children who can't pay even the small amount that they were being asked to pay. That is the idea.
Right.
Now, this idea has been taken over and misapplied. Taken over and misapplied because someone thought that they could now use this model to solve financial crisis in the university. Yeah. The financial crisis in the university is informed by totally different variables. Different variables, one of them being mismanagement of those same universities. The second being that government is never giving them resources on time. The third being that HELB has over time been unable to release even the loans that it gives to students on time. And we can understand where HELB is coming from. As unemployment has soared in the country, meaning that recent graduates are not paying their loans, HELB increasingly requires more funding from the state to be able to provide loans, and the state is not providing the funding. So HELB is stuck. It's approving loans and not disbursing. There's a student here who can testify. So that has other implications for resources in the university. What is very central to this new funding model is the means testing tool. That means testing tool needed to be developed slowly, over time, piloted, tested, until it functions before it is applied. But then a few people sit somewhere and say we have a means testing tool that has never been itself tested and start to apply. That means testing tool is the one placing students in the wrong bands because it is not a robust tool. And the third point that is important is that I feel government is trying to shirk responsibility for higher education by placing most of the children in the top bands.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate effort to shirk the responsibility, because you can't tell us that the first band to the second one is a difference of 15,000. And then you want to tell me that if you earn 120,000, you're in the same band with the people who earn $1 million and above.
As a household.
The smaller bands are too narrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have expected the first band maybe to go to 70,000, the second band to go to 200,000, so that by the time we are talking of the fourth band, we are talking about 700,000, and by the time we are talking about the fifth band, we are talking about people who earn $1 million.
Okay.
And that would actually make the means testing tool function. But we needed to test it, make sure it works.
But you might know, because the president said that the means testing tool has existed since, was it 1997 or 1980?
It doesn't matter how long it has existed. If it was never tested for purpose,
yeah,
it doesn't serve the purpose.
Yeah.
It needs to have gone through proper testing for this particular purpose that we are using it.
Yeah.
That is an important consideration. So the means testing tool is wrong. And for as long as it's wrong, this model then remains faulty.
Yeah.
Janet, what are your thoughts? Also, benefiting from what we've seen learners say, including some that complained to Citizen TV sometime last week, and now yesterday was saying they appealed and they have been successful, placed from, I think, band 4 and 3, now down to 2.
I do not want to start the conversation from the band thing, because for me it sounds like just another big lie and you know, sloganeering thing that we are now used to as a country. I want to begin it from, first and foremost, we are told that university fees were revised in 2023. Who revised the fees? Because I think that's what is most important. Whether you're placed in band 1 or band 5, as long as you're paying exaggerated fees, it doesn't help anybody. Who agreed on these fees for starters? The other very annoying thing is a confession by the same universities that fees are different from university to university. Take, for an example, Nairobi University of Nairobi, take TUK, take KU, you know, universities that literally operate from the same environment. Why would you expect the costs to differ that much? I'm seeing this morning, for example, the cost of doing dental surgery in Moi University, and that is higher than that of doing dental surgery in Nairobi University by 80,000. What are we talking about?
Nationalized.
You know, and I remember when we were revising secondary school fees, when President Uhuru Kenyatta set up the Kilemi Mwiria task force.
Yep.
I was a member of that task force. And by that time, secondary school fees had hit 102,000 per year. But it was so various, because there are schools like Kakamega High that were charging 48,000 when Alliance was charging 102. And we sat in the task force, and I remember the acrimony in the room, because we demanded that every principal projects their fee structure. And there were so many unnecessary things that we went shutting out and kicking out. And that is how school fees across the country came to 53,000. And there's something that I want the president to understand today. This is not a brand new idea. These are ideas that have existed. But ideas in education are moderated by our national goals. We educate for equity. It is not important for you to look smart, articulating how you think things should look like. That is not the point here. The point is, we do not want to leave any child behind, and that is our reality. And that is why you're seeing, seated next to me here is a child of a single mother. How do you explain that they are placed in some band 4, they will end up with a loan of 102 a year, and 52,000 amount that the household is supposed to part with? And what is the catch here? The catch here is, consistently, the government will still pay the 73,000 that they were paying. So school fees has increased for anybody else apart from government itself, because giving children additional loans. So you know, when you hear the language that we are giving you 102,000, it is not free money. These children will pay that money. What are we talking about? And I want to remind the president about his predecessors and what they did for this particular sector. Starting from Kenyatta himself, he began by setting the pace on education when he politically high-ranked education by saying that illiteracy is the biggest challenge that Kenya was facing post-independence. That is a very big statement, and it is what has anchored education to what it is. Came to the late President Moi. There is no man in this country that has built more schools than President Moi. Literally every girl's school is Moi. And you could see his appreciation of what public education means to him. And then came Mwai Kibaki, the father of free education. He did not only do free primary education that brought back 1 million children back to school, but he also brought free day secondary education in 2008. And then came Uhuru Kenyatta. He sustained the free primary education and the free day secondary education, despite the challenges, because we could see the challenges even in capitation, not sending it in good time, but he still sustained it and, in fact, increased the capitation. As at when he was leaving, per child, the capitation was 22,000, and that happened still with help, despite the challenges that it could be late, but he did not touch so much about this sector. But what are we seeing now? In barely 2 years, we have not only revised capitation to some meager 12,000 as it is now, because the books are saying 17,000, but a lot of it remains in Jogo for I don't know this and the other. We are now doing 12,000 Kenya shillings. Look at what is happening.
Free day secondary.
Free day secondary.
I thought it's supposed to be 22,000.
It is not 22,000 anymore. There is an admission by the government that they have revised it. That's a press statement that was given by the PS Belio Kipsang, that they have revised it to 16,000. But the entire 16,000 does not go to schools. There is money that remains in Jogo. And so what the principals are receiving is some common 12,000, give or take. So we are really in the same below 2 years. He has touched higher education. And what is the trick here? The trick here is this government does not want to send money to universities. And what language do they use? They tell us universities have been in debt. Debts that did what? Debts that did what? Who audited these debts? The universities that just barely about 5 years ago went on a buildings buying spree. Let me give an example of JKUAT, for example, that I'm aware. They collected a loan of about 3 billion Kenya shillings. They bought a building in CBD.
You mean 30 or 3?
3 billion shillings. They bought a building in CBD. They bought 250 acres of land. I don't know where. How can you tell me that those universities are in debt? Sell those buildings for all we care. I mean, and that is why we are telling the president. When we begin the conversation about university
This is public information, or
it is public information. It is public information. Which university does not have a building everywhere? These fourth floor things. Rwanda. These universities that were begun everywhere. What are we talking? We are seeing, and this is what the president was made to buy into by the VCs. The VCs are still hanging over the appetite of the PSSP money. The parallel programs give them some appetite that they can do all this. We are telling the president, nobody has a problem with brand new ideas, but we have a problem with brand new ideas that do not respect the fact that every child has a right to this so-called education. And before we even start discussing what band everybody has been placed on, we want accountability on two things. Number one, who decided that what costs what? That is one we want to know. Number two, universities are in debts. Debts that did what? Debts that did what exactly? So that then we can begin a fair conversation about this is a national problem. And finally, we want to see the government commitment. Do not tell us that the government commitment is we are giving more loans to students. Those are liabilities. Those are things that households will be responsible for in the near future.
Right. The president yesterday was speaking at the KICC, and he said that he has held 3 meetings with vice chancellors, and they are saying that the model is working. And they have confirmed that it's working.
It's working for them.
And the plan is to make it sustainable. Then there are a few students who are asking, is it working for the parent and the students? And he also says that the feedback has been that there is need to do more explaining. Students and parents need to learn more. He also said, the president, I have engaged students. They have told me of their concerns. They have raised issues of students in wrong bands. I've explained it will be corrected. And according to his own admission, 26,000 learners out of the 134,000 applicants have appealed. I don't know what percentage that is. Kaburu will be telling us shortly. But before we listen to the Chief Justice, okay, let's listen to the Chief Justice first on what she had to say about the university funding model.
That a child who has qualified to go to the university can be there crying, saying, look, I've been put in band 5. Is it band 5? When I ought to be in band 1, and therefore I cannot afford to go to the university. And when you follow, you find the person, the child of a well-to-do family, has been put in band 1.
Interesting coming from the Chief Justice. So tell me, Nick, what is your experience at the university? What is the quality of services?
Starting with the facilities we have at the Kenyatta University, I can say, as Kaburu said, his alma mater, his time, and compared to our time, you find students early in the morning, you have a class maybe at 7, and it's 6:30, no water to shower. So you are working with a jerry can, going to fetch for water. When you take these matters to the concerned or to the relevant authorities, the VCs, the deans, they tell you you have problems. Yet, the registration or the deadlines for the fees are always met. The capitation for the university, they are always given. And they invoice you your household fee, meaning they have the resources to renovate and to give us amicable facilities to use. But when you find that there's an event or there's an activity concerning them, well taken care of. But as the students, it beats logic that we struggle. There's a time in our school we didn't have electricity for 2 days. And there are some people studying in hostels. They require the electricity. How is supposed to study in such environment? Also, they always tell us that the government is delaying the money, but we have met the end of the bargain as the household. So they can use that money to give us the facilities. That is point number 1. Number 2, the existing model for help was so efficient. Take a look at the 3rd years and 4th years. They do not complain, because you find their invoice for the fee is around 15 to 20,000, or maybe maximum 30,000.
The rest for a year?
Yeah.
So every semester is half?
For a semester, yeah, 15, 20, thereabout.
Okay.
But for the new funding model, for us, who are the pilot phase, the least you can pay is maybe 30,000 per semester. Yeah. So it beats logic when they say the new funding model was to become more efficient, yet it's not good for the students. Yesterday, listening to the president, the vice chancellors who are present at the KICC were saying the new funding model is good, maybe for them. But at a student's perspective and a parent's perspective, they are quite constrained because they don't have the capacity to raise the money. Looking at a student like Ongato, who was brought here, he is admitted at JKUAT to study medicine and surgery. And the parent is supposed to raise 86,000. The parent being a sambusa vendor. Is that even possible? So how are they are supposed to explain to us the efficacy of this new funding model and how it will help the students and the parents, because this model is supposed to be across the board, not for certain people. And from my perspective, I can say that the new funding model is in a way politicized, because even the consistency with the figures. Yesterday, listening to the president, at a time he told us the universities have a debt of 51 billion. Then it came to 70 billion. And yesterday it was 100 and something billion. So what is the current debt for the universities? Also looking at private universities, they are placed by the COOPS, which is the body for placing students. And these placed in the private universities do not receive scholarship. They are given loans. Why place a student where you cannot be able to facilitate their learning? So it's becoming a very big question. And the president said yesterday that these bans have been in existence. He even spoke of himself using HELB in 1987, whereas HELB started in 1995 by a Parliament Act, Cap 213A. So I wonder, what kind of HELB was he using? He needs to explain to us.
Nick, tell me, what band do you think you should belong to?
Now, honestly, I can say band 2 or band 3. That will be comfortable. My parent will be able to raise even the fees and not be constrained and meet other responsibilities for the family.
Okay, and just for the sake of the viewer, band 2, it would mean that the government gives you a scholarship of 60%, a loan of 30%, and family would raise 10% of your fees. At the moment, your fees is 183, 10% would be about 18,000. or thereabout. If you're to go to band 3, the government would finance half of your fees, which would be 92,000 shillings or thereabout. The loan of 30%, and family would raise 20%, which would be about 36,000 shillings in a year. Dr. Manyasa, what do you want to say? And were there loans in 1987 under what
loans
system?
have been there much longer than HELB.
Yeah.
So it's true that at the time the president went to university, there were loans. And they.
How was it working that time?
It was. Maybe I'm not best placed to explain because I wasn't that.
But I'm not saying you were there.
Yeah, but there was a loan scheme.
Yeah.
That gave every student a fixed amount of loan, and they, of course, it was a small amount, and they were required to pay when they start working. So there was a loan scheme, but it was uniform for everyone. They didn't need to apply. Once you are a university student, you are guaranteed that amount, and you had to pay when you get employed.
Regardless of your family background?
Regardless, it was a fixed amount. It's the money that university students were swimming in, enjoying themselves. That is the generation
boom.
That is the generation that enjoyed being in the university.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they were fed for free in the mess. And you still got this money to buy yourself a suit and buy yourself something so that so that you stand out as a university student. Wow. You did not need to look like you are struggling when you are actually a university student. So they got money to live well, and basically that is what most of it was. I have my own former teacher professor who told me he used that money to educate his siblings. When he was a university student, he got money that he used to educate his siblings because he didn't need to spend it in college. There was food, there was accommodation, there was everything. But I want to speak to the point that he has raised around placing learners in private universities and not funding them. For a very long time, government did not place students in private universities. Private universities had to admit those who applied to go there. And so they only admitted those who were not admitted by public universities. A few years ago, under the last regime, a decision was made to place students in private universities as well. And they placed students in private universities and they were paying their fees until this regime came in. And there was a lot of talk, why should public money be given to private institutions? And that was stopped by Parliament, actually, because it was the same argument that has been advanced against giving private schools capitation. So it was advanced that private universities should not be given. But if that is the position, then we should go back to the point where all the learners who qualify to join university are placed in public universities, and let those who choose to go to private universities by applying there, go there and pay for themselves, as was the case before. But you cannot take someone's child and post them to a private university and then shirk your responsibility of funding their higher education when they have actually qualified to be admitted to university and funded by the public. I think that is very important to note. And if they are not funding even now, I think we have had one of the most irresponsible parliaments, I should be honest to say, because they jump onto issues. And sometimes I feel like they're ignorant, they don't know what they're trying to do. There has been global push for a very long time to prevent us from accessing higher education. 1985, Saropoulos writes and says higher education confers benefits to the private individual. Higher education is not a public good. It benefits the private individual, and so the individual should pay for it. And based on that paper, World Bank starts to push governments of developing countries to divest from higher education and let higher education be funded by the individual because it confers benefits to the individual. That changed in the year 2000. Otherwise, throughout the 90s, Moi had to live under a lot of pressure to continue funding higher education because they were not, governments of developing countries were being pushed not to invest in higher education. What I know is going on right now is that there is a lot of push to force our governments to invest in TVET, and it's not their agenda. Yeah. They're being pushed to invest in TVETs and divest out of higher education. But the government has to pick the path they want to follow. Is it that path they want to follow, or do they want to fund higher education for the benefit of our countries? If they want to fund higher education for the benefit of our countries, they must then start to think about a functional higher education system. You cannot be telling us universities are in debt and you are opening new kiosks called universities that offer degrees that are not even worth the paper they are written on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are opening, I think, in Nyandarua, we have promised university in Kisii, we have promised Nyamira, we have. For heaven's sake, we either want to fund higher education or we want to divest. But even if we want to divest, then let us consolidate what is there so that we can make value out of it, rather than play politics with it at the same time while divesting.
And what does research say about that notion that higher education benefits the private
that notion has been debunked, and now higher education has been funded. But we are a classic, both in Kenya and globally, we are a classic society that feels once I have climbed over the ladder and I'm here, others shouldn't climb. And basically what we are trying to do is to say, since we benefited from higher education and we are here, the rest should get sufficient education to serve us. They shouldn't get what we have. They should get just enough for them to serve us. Now, that is where, and there's been aggressive campaign. I went home and found some old people whose children have qualified to go to university are being persuaded to take their children to TVET. And told, when you go to TVET,
by who?
There's a lot of public campaign to tell people that, university graduates are now not being employed. To get a job, you need to go to TVET. And I sat down with a few and asked them and told them, this is Matungu, where I come from. Yeah. In this sub-county, if we trained 50 plumbers, 50, can they earn a living from this sub-county? We have had 900,000 students come out of Form 4 last year. Mm-hmm. Just about 150,000 qualified to go to university. 750 are TVET material. Is there sufficient space for them in the TVETs? No. Why are you asking one who has qualified to go to university to come back to this TVET cohort, when actually the available numbers for TVET cannot even be accommodated entirely?
Right. And Amos, as you look at this, because the government is coming on board with, of course, the argument that he referred to, that universities were indebted. Never mind that much of this is debt by the government of the Republic of Kenya. But at the same time, you're dealing with a situation that, and you'll be looking at the slides later on, the education financing, 27% of national revenue going to education, still not enough, and never mind the all scattered bursaries that you can talk about. So what would be the solution to ensuring that universities are able to finance the operations there without burdening
the households,
but at the same time not stretching the resources of the government?
Yeah, thank you. I think, as Emmanuel mentioned, the first thing is to be very clear on what we want with higher education. And as Emmanuel did mention, that push that higher education returns were going to benefit the individual. Now, from where I sit, I've got some little higher education, and I wonder how much of it benefits me as a person or whether it benefits more and more. And I think that it's true that it's been debunked, that higher education benefits are not more private, because the point was that there are more social benefits when you invest in basic education, primary and secondary and such. And so for as long as they got primary and secondary education, it was sufficient. So let's first of all be very clear on what we want as far as higher education is concerned. Then we can now work backwards. And obviously we can't be talking about divesting. It's completely... it is completely off the mark. you cannot be talking about condemning. I mean, 27%, you already have 63% that you can choose to do with them whatever you want to do with them, whether they go to TVET or they don't go to TVET, or still just remain to roam around in the villages. We can do something with the 27%, particularly when we want to protect innovation, which is a space that we require. Then let's now move forward and begin to look at how do we best utilize the resources that are available. As I did mention, we have a problem because amalgamation, as Emmanuel did mention, the challenge around wastage of the already available resources, the mismanagement of our universities. We know a lot of them have really been mismanaged. Some of these vice chancellors, in fact, you sit and listen to them talk of how things are working, and they are not even paying their staff salaries on time.
Is that so?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Universities...
but the vice chancellors there spoke about how glorious this has been.
without mentioning,
yeah.
I know of colleagues who are yet to earn their July salaries in the university. And then we know of some that have issued notices that they will only be able to pay up to a certain percentage.
You're talking of years before the last one
about
year?
2024. So we are not right now.
Even took as we speak, they have only paid 65%
of the salary.
Of net, not even of gross.
The funding model has been in existence for
yeah, so that's what one wonders. I have a lot of friends who provided services to these universities in the name of part-time, because universities and which is a serious conflict of interest issue within government in being a regulator and a provider of essential services like education, where when government is supposed to regulate and at the same time provide services, when it can't provide, it falls back to default, whereby governments default by not defaulting. And one of the obvious things that you set out a lot of universities, you are not able to have sufficient faculty, so you resort to part-timers. You don't pay them. Then when they quit, again you onboard new part-timers who teach. They get frustrated, they leave. Then again you onboard new part-timers, and that becomes one of the ways that they keep on mentioning.
And what is the explanation?
I don't know. I think some of these questions you need to be asking those vice chancellors. I think to them, because sometimes it's very frustrating.
The vice chancellor of Embu University, and I think it's the vice chancellor.
So you asked me the question around solutions. So I was just coming to...
Sorry, Amos, I'm just saying what he said.
Yeah.
That round one of the new model has enabled universities to get out of the earlier pit. Universities will have a turnaround and no longer insolvent. He was talking about how great it is. What do you want to add?
let me tell you,
then I'll come back
the first time they posted and said the president meets VCs at State House and they assure him of that the funding model works, I understood that the biggest problem we as Africans face is that we have unimaginable stock of sycophants floating all over the place. And for as long as you have sycophants, let me tell you there will always be a dictator. We are here, 4 of us here, 5. If you make me chairman of this table, and I call a meeting, you come here in time, when I walk in, you stand, all of you. I have never asked you to do so. Next time I come in, you stand. The third time I come and one of you does not stand, I want to know why. Just natural. Available stock of sycophants just breeds dictatorship. These vice chancellors are keen on second-guessing the president and trying to imagine what does he want to hear and tell him exactly that. When they're letting our children sleep in bedbug-infested hostels that we didn't sleep in, without water on campus, with dirty toilets. I left KU in 2015 as a member of staff, and KU was clean. They had tissue paper in public toilets in KU. That thing is not there now as we speak. So how is the funding model working for them?
Okay. Sorry,
I was supposed to finish
a point that I can get to Janet.
Yes. So I was telling you that let's just be a little bit bold. And the current crop of vice chancellors are a serious letdown. Let's call a spade a spade. The low-hanging fruit that all universities in this country offer is what they have called the school of business. Even in this country, it's difficult to tell what is a faculty, what is a school. I think they're just words that we throw around. But interestingly, there is no single university that is capable of running itself as a business.
And
that should tell you where we have the problems. And all of them have the school of business They are the ones teaching people strategic management and restructuring when they can hardly apply any of them. So we need a serious relook around who is managing our universities. Let's be bold a little bit in terms of what we need to do for our higher education.
Okay.
Some of the things that have been mentioned, like what Janet was talking about, the cost of our programs. I asked yesterday in a group, who is who? And I asked, where was the place of the Commission for University Education in terms of pricing some of these costs and services that the universities are providing? So I think let's have some very, very, whether it's honest, whether it's robust, I don't want to use this word dialogue because now that's also one of the most abused words around. Everything you talk about, everyone tells you, let's have a dialogue. I'm no longer going to use that word dialogue. Just like I'm no longer going to use this word communication. I'm not buying into the rectangular narrative of everything is about communication. Let's be a little bit this word communication. I'm not buying into the rectangular narrative of everything is about that is being offered deep there in Marimanti in Tharaka University that is different from what is in Embu and a few kilometers away from what is in Meru. Let us talk about what will make our...
There's a Tharaka University.
And there is also Chuka University. So I think you also need to go to the road and take...
No, there's Tharaka University. I didn't know that. I know Chuka.
Yes, there is Tharaka University, if you want my answer. There is Tharaka University. And just as I told you, you have Technical University of Kenya just across the road from the University of Nairobi. And Janet has clearly told you that the pricing is quite different. So there is something that needs to happen around that. The Ministry of Education needs to be a little bit bolder. I don't understand why government is shy. Because some of these things are also just common sense. I do not understand why, as Professor Sifuna would have said, we philosophize even things that are not supposed to be philosophized. Why can't just common sense reign and then we bring some kind of sobriety and order in our higher education? And it's possible. We already have sufficient resources. On the issue of the 27%...
Sorry, let me hear Janet first. You've been speaking for quite some time. Janet, so the solution out of this, because look, he is going to second year. Soon he'll be out of the school with a loan that he'll have to service because he says his appeal didn't succeed. So what are the possible solutions out of all this, knowing the situation even with the public finances?
Yeah, I think I want to give the president three solutions out of the current quagmire. And one of it is not explaining. We already know, Kenyans have already now memorized band 1, 2, 3, all the way, and, you know. So no more communication is relevant for this issue now. And we need thorough accountability in our universities, for example. Parents are not going to fund bloated wage bills, you know. We have the so-called, I don't know whether it's right to call them non-academic staff. Yeah, too many of them. And I use my alma mater, Moi University, is not any case to speak about. I always say it's insolvent, the following day it is not. But literally everybody in the village is employed in that university, and that is now what parents are being made to pay. So there's a lot of accountability that really needs to happen, even before the president comes to parents and students and asks them to step up the cost of education. We really don't think that the figures that have been given is what it would actually cost. And number two, I think the president really needs to regulate the appetite of the vice chancellors when it comes to they're thinking about the amount of money that they can generate from this. A lot of them are suffering from the PSSP and the Module 2 hangover, sort of a thing. And so they are who the president has made his advisor, and probably he's listening from that dimension. And it's important for the president to really know that when he meets with the vice chancellors, let him know that he's dealing with a conflict of interest issue. You know, these are people who are beneficiaries of the amount of funds that they are asking from parents. So I do not think that they're the people that need to even determine how much that cost should be. Yeah. So maybe the president needs to tell us who determined, is there an independent body, and so on and so forth. And the relationship between the, now it used to be chair, now it is the commission. It is CUE right now. And I know that a lot of people that have sat at CUE were part of this presidential working party that have advised. I'm aware Professor Some was a member of that, you know, Professor Munavu. And looking at the history of some of these leaders that are advising the president, they literally ran Moi University to the ground, to insolvency. So really, we really need to think very critically.
Who did that? Who did that?
Professor Munavu was in Moi University, quickly succeeded by Professor Some, who was my VC. And now they were the members of the chair and the vice chair of the Presidential Working Party.
Was a member.
So when we look at what these great men have done in the past and their histories with running universities that are now run to the ground, we do not really see a lot of creativity and a lot of new ideas that can come from it.
Do you attribute the mismanagement at that university to them?
Can I not? When you're the VC, you're the chief executive of the university. Yes, we should pin down the mismanagement of universities to the VCs directly. And finally, the third thing, we really need the president...
Allow me to just say that those are your views.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. But they have been VCs of those run-down universities.
That's for sure.
We really need the president to elevate his commitment to education. I listened to him yesterday saying, I would really have wanted to quote, because it got me really shocked, when he said that I have made a deliberate decision to invest in education. He said that yesterday. This is a man who cut down on capitation grants drastically by 24%. This is the same man that is committed to running universities this much. This is the same man that is now running away from the burden of funding higher education and really pushing it to the parents and, unfortunately, to the learners. And I want to ask, show us your commitment. Don't talk to us anymore about your commitment. Can we see your commitment? And can we sit here and say, just like I said, that we credit Jomo Kenyatta for this. We credit Moi for this. We credit Kibaki for this. We credit Uhuru for this. And I want to ask today, what do we want to credit William Ruto for when we think about what he has done with basic education and what he's currently doing with higher education? We would want to look back and say, surely the president is committed to funding education. We do not want to hear that statement coming from him again. And then again yesterday still he said, and I want to quote, something which he said last year when he was launching the Dish in a County program in Nairobi. Last year, he said that he has set aside 3 billion Kenya shillings to build classrooms in Nairobi. He said that yesterday. Again, 1 year ago, he told us that when he was launching Dish in a County. So I went back to the budget. I could not see these 3 billion Kenya shillings for building classes, which he said yesterday. I really think that we need to start holding the president to account for everything that he says. Who does he take us for? We are human beings that listen to him. We want a leader that can tell us this and we hold him accountable to it. I will actually be tracing this 3 billion because I have a very close relationship with Nairobi as a county. 3 billion Kenya shillings for building classrooms. We were promised a year ago. Yesterday, he renewed the commitment. We really need to see all these commitments and this talk by the president bearing fruit. Otherwise, it's becoming a little bit embarrassing when you see a president. And I asked, what the president did yesterday, isn't there a cabinet secretary that can do that? Isn't there a permanent secretary, a PS, for example, that can do that? Does it take the president to articulate the vision of this country? Nobody else bears that vision. Nobody else is as competent. Nobody else is as nobody else understands that vision. Does it have to be him every other time? And that is why we are saying people start losing confidence in structures. We sat here last time with the unions, and you could see them saying we are not discussing with the minister because they have seen what ministers have become, that it has to take the president to be the one doing public participation with university students. What does that tell us about his ministers? What does that tell us about his cabinet secretaries and about his PSs and the directors? What we are saying is that we do not need to see the crisis of confidence of systems. We need the president to start strengthening such systems so that even when he's away, when he goes abroad or when he goes where, Kenyans can sit back and say, yes, there is someone in office that they are taking care of things, and we are sure that when we take issues to the cabinet secretary, for example, he is actually in charge. But we cannot say that as at now. Okay.
Interesting. And I want us to take a look at the feedback that has come to us this morning. I was just trying to see if I can find, because I think the cabinet secretary, the former cabinet secretary for Treasury spoke about classrooms that were supposed to be constructed in the budget statement. If you find it, I'll bring it to you. But first on Dombori, you're saying that during the town hall discussion yesterday, it was evident that the current model favors the university administration over the students when it comes to affordability. Instead of achieving a balanced win-win scenario, the model operates on a win-loss. Next one, Daniel, you're saying that the new university funding model is unconstitutional. The constitution is very clear, education is a right and is provided by the state. Constitutionally, university funding should not be based on parents' wealth. All students are poor. All right. Muchili Mani, you're saying that NFM, the new funding model, is the hallmark of government mischief. It costs double to train a student at a public university compared to private universities. We lost it when we thought everyone should have a degree with no requisite funding. Admission was based on bed capacity in our days. Clement, you're saying that quite unfortunate that those who went to university by boom up to 1995 and HELB are now creating barriers for very poor but bright students. There's need for public engagement and civic education before implementation of the new model. And Piers Mue, you're saying that this band system makes me sick. I don't see any hope of taking my kids to university anymore. Ruto should look for think tanks like Janet Ouko for genuine advice and leave some of his fake advices. Oof. You just call people fake. Okay, so now 1 billion shillings for construction of classrooms for junior secondary schools and 2.3 billion shillings for construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers is what the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury proposed to allocate to the education sector. That's interesting. So where do we go from here? I know we were supposed to talk about, and you're running out of time, we were supposed to talk about the transition to grade 9, which is a very crucial term because this will, after this term, then we get into the final level of junior secondary. Never mind, you're still grappling with, do we have it interns or do we have teachers? How many are there in the public sector? And time is running. Soon we transition to the senior level of secondary.
Very quickly, before I come to that, there is an issue that is topical now, and I'm afraid it might get hijacked and misapplied again. We proposed to the Presidential Working Party the merging of all bursaries to create one framework under which learners will access bursaries, and that was proposed. It is something that we spoke to the National Assembly Committee about, and they were resistant. We spoke to the Senate Committee about it, and they were very supportive of the idea. Now I have seen Parliament is happy about it. I am fearful that it might end up being run the way we run the national government bursary scheme, in a very opaque and unequitable way. What we proposed is this, and I want to repeat so that it is not lost. Merge all the schemes together. Create a structure at the national level so that at the start of the year we know we have 50 billion shillings for bursary. And then distribute that money to the counties. Not necessarily the money, but the allocate counties and create a structure at the ward level. We want the money devolved all the way to the ward, and the allocating structure should be at the ward. So that we know we have 50 billion as a country. Nairobi this year has received 1 billion. If Nairobi has received 1 billion, it has 17 counties. We want sub-counties. We want to know how much has Kamukunji received. Let it be public. Let's know how many wards are in Kamukunji. How much has each of the wards received? At the ward level, we want that committee at the ward level to be the one that allocates the funds and makes public the list and says, in Ward A, we received 500 million. We have allocated these 20 children. They are so and so, so and so, so and so. And they are in schools A, B, C, and D. So that anyone can verify. To avoid a situation that we had where we had that a governor would issue checks to schools in the name of bursaries and go back to those schools and then cash the checks. So centralization has the benefit of achieving efficiency and preventing leakages, but centralization could be abused, and I want that abuse avoided by creating a transparent structure that does not allow some regions to get more money than others, but that does not also allow those allocating to just allocate to their own children and their friends' children, so that the list of children awarded is known, can be verified at the ward level. Having said that, we have the issue of transition, which is very crucial right now. First of all, the CBC framework does not have anything called domicile. The 47-page document does not have the word domicile anywhere. We came up with domicile because the previous regime failed to plan for the transition. Magoha ran around like a madman, didn't plan. And I said that in this studio many times, that he was doing sub-county commissioners, sub-county education officer's job instead of doing Waziri's job. He failed to plan for the transition. Because he failed to plan, the new government was faced with a crisis, and they said, we will domicile junior secondary in primary. I understood at that point that domiciling would be an interim measure to avert a crisis. It was not supposed to be permanent, because the framework envisages a primary school, a junior school, and a senior school. So I am looking at the transition right now, and we have, again, for the last 2 years left, and now we have another crisis on our hands. A crisis of, we have children leaving grade 8 to join grade 9.
Right.
We have 1 million children in grade 8.
Yes.
We have talked about building 16,000 classrooms. First of all, there's no budgetary allocation. The 9,000 classrooms that are being built right now are being funded by GPE. And I am certain of
what?
Global Partnership for Education, and being managed by World Bank. They're the ones managing that process. There is no other allocation. But even if we were to build the 16,000 classrooms, we have 20,400 thereabout schools offering junior. So that will mean not every school gets 1 class. Even if we were to do that, a school like Mwiki that requires at least 20 classrooms to transition grade 8, even if we gave them the money, they don't have space to build 20 classrooms. Mwiki Primary has no space to build 20 classrooms. If the money was available, there's no time. Magoha had a whole year, tried to build 10,000 classrooms, only managed 10. Managed 6,000 with the money there. Now we don't have money, we have 3 months. People are telling us we will be able to build 16,000 classrooms. It's not possible. If we were to build them, where are the teachers? Because all our JSS schools, those that have 2 streams have 2 teachers currently. And those 2 teachers are teaching grade 7 and 8. Will the 2 teachers be able to teach grade 7, 8, and 9?
Are those the interns?
Yes, they're the interns. Will they be able to teach 3 classes? They can't. So what we have to do right now is to accept that we have 1.1 million Form 1s. We actually have more Form 1s than grade 8s.
Yeah.
Let us transition these children to the nearest secondary school next year, so that, first of all, they take advantage of the teachers who are there, who are currently teaching Form 1. And 2, they take advantage of the infrastructure that is there.
Okay.
But also we use that as a first block in starting to create a full transition of junior secondary to secondary school. So that what we end up with is the old system we used to have before. We had schools that offered O-level only because of capacity.
Right.
Those can now offer junior secondary only. We had schools that offered A-level 1 stream because of capacity. They can offer senior 1 stream. And we had schools that offered A-level 1 stream because of capacity. They can offer senior 1 stream.
Yes. Deep questions that will continue to be asked. That's our time here. Up next is Matters Sporty Monday. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Amos Kaburu, Janet Ouko, and Nicholas Kabati for making time for us to have this conversation. I hope you'll not be victimized. I think we're just speaking about the matters of the nation, and it should not worry anyone as long as it is the truth. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time. Bye for now.